Welcome back to Henry Harrison's Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance podcast featuring entrepreneur, coach, professor, and author Brad Poulos. Before we get started, like and subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Henry Harrison podcast, Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance. Today, we're very fortunate to have Brad Poulos on with us, and he and I were just talking a quick conversation before the podcast that it's going to be difficult to recite all the things that he has done or to sum up his life in a very short fashion. But entrepreneur, founder, scaler of businesses, mentor, investor, professor, angel investor, and accelerator advisor, I guess I'll say. So with that, hello, Brad.
Hi, Henry. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's terrific. Why don't you talk a little bit about the things that you're doing now, and then we'll have a chance to go back to what you've done up to this point in your life because it's so
Sure.
much.
Yeah, I split my time between advising small businesses, and my kind of sweet spot is between $5 and $50 million in revenue, and that usually translates to up to several dozen employees. And teaching in the, I'm happy to say, world-renowned entrepreneurship department at Toronto Metropolitan University, which I've been doing for about the last roughly 15 years as a part-time professor.
Great. And when you say advising, what's some color on that?
Sure. So that actually, there's a couple of flavors of that. So first of all, I do actually serve as an advisor to startups that have some money and actually will pay. You got to pay the bills. But I also spend a fair bit of time mentoring in the accelerator incubator ecosystem here in Toronto, which is pretty well developed.
And how do you decide? I understand these things can be mutual, but how do you decide where you want to focus? Is there an area that you see right now that you're really particularly excited about, or is it everything from manufacturing to tech to service businesses to you name it?
Yeah, there are some industries that I'm certainly stronger in and others, and I also allow myself to be pulled into whatever's hot. For example, in Canada, we legalized cannabis across the entire country back in 2018, and so in 2015, our prime minister telegraphed that was going to happen. So I started to study that industry fairly intently and I was in pretty well positioned to advise companies as they started to emerge in the couple of years leading up to legalization. Now, that industry ended up being quite a oh boy, I don't want to swear on your podcast, so I'll just say it was an interesting industry to be involved in because there were so many players that came in. It's natural whenever you have a new industry develop, it's going to attract a lot of capital. And that's exactly what happened. We had a massive overbuild on the production side, but also on the retail side. And those are quite separate in Canada. In some places, I know in the United States, for example, they actually mandate vertical integration. In other states, they actually outlaw it. So it's quite interesting. There's a very broad range of approaches. But here in Canada, it just kind of naturally bifurcated into production companies that grow cannabis and produce all of the other kind of derivative products and the retailers. And so in my province in Ontario, we actually have more places that you can buy cannabis than you can buy beer or alcohol. And that's pretty out of whack when you look at the size of the two markets. So it's in a process of rationalizing itself right now. And that's been really interesting to watch. I come out of the telecom industry, so I've done a fair bit of work there and in telecom adjacent industries. So that even extends into software and that sort of thing. I ran a distribution business for about 10 years, so I've had several clients as well in distribution of all kinds of different products. Distribution is a skill set that, in and of itself, outside of whatever industry that you happen to be in. So I'm really happy that I get to do lots of different things, and so I get exposed to lots of different industries, and I by no means do I specialize in any one.
Yeah, that makes life very, very interesting. But I know you're teaching business. I don't know if it's MBAs, but I got an MBA, and so Master in Business Administration. There's actually always going to be some practical things about learning a specific space, but the general fundamental understanding of managing businesses obviously overlaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I teach entrepreneurship primarily. So I'm involved mostly in classes around startup, although I do sometimes teach the small business course. But it's usually studio courses, often teaching around either the concept of lean startup or design thinking. And so when I got here about 17 years ago, the notion of lean startup was really just coming into its own. I certainly didn't practice it back in the late 90s and early 2000s when I was starting and growing companies. We did it the old fashioned way. But what that's taught me is that, and I have an MBA as well, so I'm burdened by one just like you. It's taught me that entrepreneurship is a process and it can be taught. Now, there are some people, of course, that are born entrepreneurs, and that's really more of a mindset and like a personality and the ability, quite frankly, to handle ambiguity and risk. But the skills aren't born. The skills are grown. The skills are either you teach them to yourself or you learn them from others. And so that's actually been one of the kind of key learnings for me as I moved from being a business person into a part-time prof.
Explain for those that don't know, you referenced the term lean startup. A little flesh that out a little bit more for
Yeah,
everybody.
actually, I think one of the best ways I could do that is by contrasting it with a time when I didn't practice it, and then we'll get to it. So, for 15 years, I had a corporate career, and I worked at a company called Telesat, which is one of the largest satellite operators in the world. And I got an opportunity from the president of that company to look at some technology and figure out, is there a business here? So somebody had approached him and said, we have this invention, but that's not a business. So he said, go look at this tech. Tell me, first of all, do you think it works? And second of all, do you think there could be a business there? So I wrote a business plan. I later ended up implementing the business plan, and I actually ran that business for 2 years inside Telesat. But leading up to the approval, I spent about 3 months while doing my other job, which was running sales and marketing for about half the company. I wrote a business plan with the help of an engineer and a person in our marketing department. And I presented the business plan in, I think it was May of 95, to our board of directors. Our board of directors was the same board of directors as Bell Canada, the largest telco in Canada, because they owned us. So we didn't have a separate board. We just had the same individuals. They just had to meet at our place every once in a while, too. And I presented the business plan to them, and I asked them for $2 million to start this business. And that was $1 million to give to Hughes Network System as a license. Good on them. And another million to build a facility and for some working capital. And they gave me the $2 million in the meeting. They had the vote in front of me. I had not talked to a single customer at that point. That is the opposite of lean startup. So now lean startup, the best way to explain it is we used to do ready, aim, fire, and now we do ready, fire, aim. You sell before you build anything. You test everything. You do small experiments. You fail fast, fail cheap, fail quick, fail small. Obviously, the answer is not to fail. We're not trying to fail. But the idea is that you're testing ideas all the way along. The ideas around, if you're really in the sort of textbook lean startup, you're testing a problem. You go to customers, people you think might be customers, people you think might have a problem, and the first thing you do is you figure out, do they have this problem? And if they do, then you figure out as much as you can about that problem. And then you figure out as much as you can about them, and then you start thinking around solutions. And I've seen, even to this day, friends of mine or colleagues and people I know, almost always techies, they go and they build a product because they think it's a good idea. Who cares what you think? What matters is what does the market think? And that's what lean startup is all about, is taking small bets, selling first, and working through hypotheses and working from what you think to what you know in incremental steps.
Comes to mind to me is see if the dog eats the dog food. But
Yeah, we use that
well,
saying all the time.
yeah, and how do you?
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that I was going to ask you was, what are some of the skills that you teach in entrepreneurship? I think you just went through a number of them, or maybe those are habits or techniques or procedures. But is there more you'd like to add? Because I think that's interesting. What are the and I know you teach courses on this, and this is a short podcast, but what are some things that are jump out as, hey, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, here's what you need to do? And you did a pretty good summary right there, but maybe you
Sure.
can add.
Well, if you want to think about skills, then obviously research is one. Interviewing skills are very important. And one of the things I fight with my students all the time is they want to do surveys. A survey is not a tool for lean startup. A survey is a tool that big company marketing types use to answer questions that they decide that they figure out prior to ever asking anybody, right? The power of a survey is that you can talk to a lot of people, especially today because we have electronic means and all the rest of it. But the survey will never answer questions that you don't ask. And so the skill is actually in interviewing people because it allows you to have a conversation. And you can use the answer from one question to figure out, to determine what your next question is going to be. And the reason why that's important is because that's where pivots come from, right? Pivots come from the fact that you didn't know something and you learned it from talking to a customer and then made a decision to change something about your startup. It might be something around the product, it might be something around the segment, could be the way you're going to promote it, could be along any dimension of the business. And that's the other thing that really daunts a lot of people in startups is that I'm afraid it's the owner that has to do this, the founder. And the reason is very important. I've seen engineers, the first thing they want to bring on is a vice president of sales so they never have to talk to anybody. And that's fine if that person is brought in as a founder, but they have to be a founder. And the reason is that if they're just a hired gun, a couple of things are going to happen. One, they're not going to tell you everything that you absolutely need to know. And the reason is because they don't want to bring you bad news. The second thing is because they're not a founder, not an owner, they don't have the power to make a pivot on the spot. Whereas if you're a founder and you're on your third customer interview, you're very young, and you just find out you're off track. Whatever you thought things were, you thought people wanted a blue widget, and they don't. They want red. The founder can decide, we can do red. That's not a problem. And so it's one of the reasons why the founders have to do all of the early, what we call customer discovery. That super important element of lean startup.
And one of the things that's also interesting is that, so there's entrepreneurial skills that I call them skills, maybe traits, learnings. I'm struggling to summarize what that is. But with big companies, they want that as well. And I worked at a big company initially, relatively short part of my career, 4 years, but it was very impactful. It was my first job, and I got to know the CEO, and it was a fantastic company. And it was a large home building company, and they were very much can do and delegate authority and entrepreneurial. The founder was an entrepreneur; he started it, or the CEO, Dwight Schar, NVR. So now companies, they want to do entrepreneurship, and they want to try to encourage the innovation within their companies. And of course, many people have wonderful careers at big companies or medium companies or small companies, and they can benefit from, because I know you teach business and entrepreneurship, so they can benefit from a lot of the same things. Is that something that you talk about or you can share?
Oh, so I actually teach in the entrepreneurship department. So we have a Bachelor of Commerce, and it has different departments. We have marketing, we have a school of real estate and finance and accounting and hospitality, and I'm in the entrepreneurship department. So our people graduate with a Bachelor of Commerce with a major in entrepreneurship. And yet I advise most of them go work at a big company first. And the reason is because you're going to learn how to do a lot of things right. And later on, it's very difficult. If you can imagine, you leave school, you got a BCom, you go work at some small company for 15 years. In 15 years, there's no big company in the world that's going to hire you. Because it's not how it works, right? Big companies, they put people into functional silos and they want people who are good at a particular thing. In a smaller company, you can get away with being a generalist. So you can absolutely make the leap from big company to small. That's what I did. That's, I presume, what you did. But going the other way is really difficult. And the truth is, although we're graduating people with an entrepreneurship degree, most of them actually do end up going to work for medium or larger companies. And it's for the reasons that you stated, that entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial thinking, which is really what we're teaching, is very much sought after nowadays by all employers, certainly, at least good ones.
I think particularly I used to hear how fast rapidly things are changing. Well, whatever that was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years, it just continues to accelerate. The initiative and adaptability and thinking, I think, of the entrepreneurial mindset, if you want to call it that, entrepreneurial, it maybe is more important than ever.
Oh,
Second,
absolutely. So, like, in fact, one of the concepts that we teach is Carol Dweck's growth versus the fixed mindset. And absolutely, having a growth mindset is going to help you in life in general, but certainly if you're in the business, I think it's almost a must if you want to advance.
do you have a story of a flop or a failure or something difficult that you had to go through? Because most people have related
Oh,
to their
sure.
business career that you learn
Yeah,
from.
I went through the tech bust. That was not fun. We rode the internet wave up through the late 90s and also took advantage of the switch from analog to digital cellular. It actually wasn't a switch, it was an overlay, which was a huge opportunity for us because we built networks and supported others that built and operated networks. So when the digital cell phones came along in the mid to late 90s, we certainly took advantage of that, and our revenues were going through the roof. However, then the tech bust hit, and so going through that was tough. I remember saying to our employees at one point, "We have one job right now, guys," and it's funny because I'll back up. So 5 years before that, I was said, "Guys, we have one job to do. All right, go down." It's a metaphor, but go downtown to Toronto, where all the telcos are, and they're all throwing bags of money out the window. And your job is to run around and catch as much of that as you possibly can. And it's literally what it was like. You could make money just for breathing at one point. In fact, looking back at some of those companies, they just acted so irresponsibly. But it was my job. If I was to be responsible, it was to go and collect up as much of that as we could. But then 5 years later, I'm saying to my employees, "We have one job right now, guys, and that's to survive." Because it was really tough. We saw our revenues between 2001 and 2002. So the tech bust hit us a little bit later. A lot of them were hit in 2000, but anyway, we got hit a tiny bit later, and our revenues went literally in half from one year to the next. So that was pretty tough. So I ran a business with my brother for about 10 years in the wireless space. And along the way, we launched several other businesses, never, with one exception, never too far outside of our industry. But, like, for example, we sold test equipment. So we thought, why don't we create a division that actually creates test systems? And they'll buy test equipment from us, but they'll also write software, and we know all the right customers, so we can do the introductions and all that. And that business had a little bit of success early on, but it really never amounted to a whole lot. We found a small supplier, and we found a huge opportunity for that supplier at a telco in Canada. And being a little bit greedy, we actually bought half of them because we thought they're going to do so well, right? So we created a new co. Right? So the other company put all of their tech into the company. We put, I think it was around $120,000 of cash in the company. Now we have a new co with some tech and some cash. And I didn't do due diligence on the owner. And to be honest, he was crazy. He was just nuts. He had the craziest ideas about how to run a company. And so I remember about 6 months in, he walked into my office for a regular meeting that we had, and he's all smiles and giggles. And so I shook his hand and I go, "Mike, I just got one question for you. Who's buying out who here?" And we literally, we made a deal within 15 minutes. And I sold out to him because it made more sense because he had the technology. And so he bought me out and paid us back. But that's an example. So there's two lessons there. One, don't be greedy. But two, dance with the one that brung you. None of all the other businesses that we created or invested in. We invested in a wireless network operator that was a customer and needed some capital. None of them ever brought us a return anything like the core business.
One of the things that's always interesting and fun to hear is entrepreneurship. When did that start for you, and what led you to that, and how early? What was your childhood life like? Did your parents encourage you?
Sure.
Was it just something you woke up one day, or what was it?
It was always in me. So my dad was a business person and then later had his own businesses, several. And so that was something of an inspiration. And I'm not sure beyond that where it might have come from, but I've always wanted to be my own boss and have my own businesses. When I was 14, I started my first business, which was I built a chicken coop and bought around 20 hens and a rooster and had a little business for a little while selling eggs to the local area. And I was intending on also getting into selling chicks. But one day, my German Shepherd put me out of business in about 15 minutes. And I just decided not to go back into that business. So I don't want to get any more graphic than that, but I'm sure the audience can figure it out. But also, I actually, my dad turned me on to this in grade 9. I joined an organization called Junior Achievement, which aims at teaching young people about business. I was in that for 5 years through high school. And in my final 3 years, I was the president of our little company. Maybe, I'm not sure how many people actually know what Junior Achievement's all about, but if you can imagine that it runs during the school year, it's not attached to the schools, or at least wasn't then. It is now. But it was outside of the schools, it was run at night, and you went one night a week to a Junior Achievement Center. There were advisors there from local companies, typically larger ones. And you create a company in September, you capitalize, you raised shares at $1 each, figure out a product, go sell it, build it, go sell it, and then around May, you wind the company up, write an annual report, give the annual report to your shareholders, and give them back whatever portion of the capital that you can. I'm proud to say that in 5 years, every single one of the companies that I was part of returned all the capital plus a dividend to its shareholders. The other rule was no person could own more than one share. You can't go get your Aunt Mildred to just give you $100 and there you go. And so that was really important because it taught us how to go door to door, both doing the selling later on, but also at the front end. So that really gave me a mind for business. And again, sometimes my arrogance gets in my way. So I left high school and I went to biz school. And I lasted until October, until roughly our Thanksgiving, which is midway through October. I'm in Canada. And I quit. And I came home and I told my dad, and he was so mad and he was so disappointed. And this is an absolute quote. I said to him, and here I am, a 19-year-old whippersnapper who doesn't know crap, but thought I did. I said, Dad, they have nothing to teach me. And at the time, I didn't realize why that was. Looking back now with some age, I understand what happened was in the first 6 weeks, I didn't learn anything. I wasn't learning anything, but I was only 6 weeks in. But why? Because I had run 3 companies. I had written 5 annual reports. Yes, on a small scale, but I knew how to do accounting. I knew a little bit about marketing. And now, to my credit, I later went back and got an MBA. But yeah, so anyway, that's my kind of origin story.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And there's also, you talked about the risk tolerance. There's quite a number of people out there that have been successful these days, and they're saying don't go for this entrepreneur route, or go very carefully and don't necessarily glamorize it. You're on the edge of cash flow issues, potential bankruptcy.
Sure.
And the lean model sure makes a lot of sense when you look at it that way. But it's very difficult for many people that are fully engaged with their families and their corporate life that they like very much, but they think, maybe this, and it might not be best for them. Especially one of the things you talked about is the risk tolerance, because that's real. Not the
Might not be.
tolerance, but the risk.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's absolutely not for everybody, and I think the world would be a bad place if everybody was an entrepreneur and out there risking their capital and like. There's a bunch of other concepts that we teach in the entrepreneurship program at TMU that I think are helpful. And one is the idea of effectual thinking or effectuation. So there's sort of 5 principles to it. And one of them is what we call the affordable loss. So always work within your means. And lean startup, as you mentioned, really makes that a heck of a lot easier now because the bets can be smaller. You can do a lot of customer discovery type work prior to quitting your job. And so you can de-risk it somewhat. But at the end of the day, for that person that's going to quit their job and start some new venture, they probably just have a little bit higher appetite for risk than the average person. But there's another thing as well, and there's a little bit of soft science around this. It's been done by my colleagues at TMU, and that is that entrepreneurs don't perceive risk the same way. So they might look at a situation and some other person might look at the same situation, and where that other person sees, quote, risk, unquote, the entrepreneur just sees obstacles that need to be gotten around. And here's maybe a little bit of proof of this. If you take the general population, I don't know what the actual numbers are, but if you take the general population and then figure out how many of them have dyslexia, whatever that number is in percentage, there are more entrepreneurs percentage-wise that have that. Now, why is that? Because people with dyslexia learn very early on strategies to get around problems. They have to find ways to fake it. They have to find ways to get around the disability or the different ability, if we want to be more politically correct. So there's that as well.
Speaking of the risk, I was a custom home builder, had a custom home builder company and a business partner. And there's various reasons I wanted to go into something else, and I lost a bit of the love because I really love building people's dreams homes. But then as I got my MBA, all the personal guarantees. And I was early, by 4 or 5 years, but I felt, boy, sometime soon, something's going to happen, and a lot of these people I know are going to go bankrupt, and I don't want to be one of them. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Yeah.
A lot of people go through these traumatic experiences, but many of them seem to navigate it pretty well, and some don't. So
the personal guarantees were certainly scary for me. So I sold our company to a publicly traded company. And on the day we did that, the bank also relieved me of my personal guarantee on the line of credit. And boy, that was almost as good as the money, just knowing that my assets were no longer at risk. Because once they're on, they're pretty hard to get rid of. No question.
Without paying it back. This is really terrific. You're such a fascinating person. I know you're really helping the community and the world at large with all you're doing, and it's fun to hear about. Is there anything you'd like to add in the end here that I didn't think to ask or that you would like to share?
We haven't talked about any of my 3 books. So
Please, let's talk about that.
yeah, so I have 2 books that were aimed at small business operators. The first one is called, imagine this, The Small Business Operator's Manual. And so that's a textbook for small business operators. I wrote it with the small business operator in mind that didn't have a business degree. It follows the functions. There's strategy, management, accounting and finance, sales and marketing, people, technology, that kind of thing. I wrote that a couple of years ago. And then I published in January a little bit more of a fun project. The book is called Most Problems Solve Themselves. That's actually not what the book is about, because the book is 52 different articles, and that's just the title of one of them. I purposely chose the most provocative one I could find. That particular story is just about the fact that there's 2 things. One, when you're really busy, make people ask you twice for things. But the other thing is, when you're a leader, and this could apply, you don't have to be a small business person for this to apply. You could apply this in a large company. If you're a leader, when people bring you a problem, your first instinct should be to push it back. And like the example I give is, when I used to travel a lot when I was running my own business. And so people would come to me with some problem, usually not a huge one. And I'd say, like, last Tuesday I was in Vancouver. What would you do if it was last Tuesday? And they'd say, whatever. And I'd say, okay, then I think we should do that. And when I was teaching them, one, don't come to me with these things. Just go solve it yourself. You have the autonomy. I trust you. I want you to make decisions. And the power in that is that's how you develop A players. B players come to you and want you to solve all their problems. A players absolutely gobble up the opportunity to solve problems themselves. If you want to have A players, give them autonomy. Now, the art, of course, for any leader is in knowing which are the problems should I actually grab a hold of and jump in or jump on. But it's certainly not all of them. If you're going to grow your company, you have to let go. You have to be prepared that people are going to make a decision that's different than the one you would have made. Not necessarily worse, not necessarily even better, just different. And sometimes it might be worse. And so what? Does single thing in life have to be optimized? I don't think so. And the price that you pay if you're going to try to, quote, add value and optimize every decision is you're going to chase away the best people. And then the third book it's about venture finance. So it's called From Pitch to Payoff. And it's really about the world of venture finance because I teach the venture finance course at TMU from time to time. And I found there's lots and lots of books around starting a company. There's lots and lots of books for corporate finance, but almost nothing for the venture finance world. How do you get a startup financed? And through the kind of first couple phases of their life. So that's what the third one's about.
On Amazon or through a website?
Yeah, you can find them on Amazon, or if you go to my website, which is just my name, bradpoulos.com, there's links to all that.
Terrific. And if someone wanted to reach out to you for help, consulting,
please,
advice,
yes.
whatever, same thing, go to the website and contact you.
Yeah, or just look me up on LinkedIn as well. Either one is, either one is fine.
Great, okay. That's a pretty good wrap-up. A real true life expert, written 3 books. I think I left author out of the introduction. and been there, done that, full circle business, investing, running, operating, advising, teaching, authoring. Started when you were young. Really an inspiration, I think, for people who are success-minded. And thank you.
Thank you. You're a very gracious host. Much appreciated. Thank you for watching Henry Harrison's Entrepreneurs, Business and Finance podcast here on YouTube. Remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also search Henry Harrison Podcast on your favorite podcast platforms.